So maybe it's the inner child in me that just appreciates the name calling that we're now witnessing in the rising of the shield hero. But after months of suffering with the worst girl in this series, who, honestly, because of her presence, has made for some pretty intense sequences, so you can't really hate that she's in the show, but you can hate her character. But just seeing how you have these characters who either want to call her by her new name or really don't want to, but legally have to now because of Naofumi's demands, it is so just satisfying. It is so sweet to see a character who has put herself on a pedestal, the highest ranking royalty that you could find, the most beautiful. She thinks she is the top shit of the world. And to have her stripped away of all titles, all power, all authority, wearing slave clothing, having a slave crest, putting her into the place that she used to look down upon and spit upon, and having her be called things such as bitch or slut. It literally is the most ironic and satisfying punishment for a character like this. Of course you know she's still gonna cause trouble. I mean, she tries to poison Naofumi's pie in this episode. But for the time being, it is so sweet to see characters having to follow Naofumi's wish of just stripping her of all authority and titles and making her suffer. Of course, that suffering is going to make her even more bitter, I'm sure, but it's nice for the time being something like this happen. And that just exchange of from the Queen to Melty to Spear Hero, all just having to say the new names absolutely cracked me up. And something I really appreciate is how they still have the slave crest enabled, which I'm so thankful they didn't remove. I'm sure it will eventually get removed from probably some shady business in the underground. She'll probably find someone to do it for her. But I'm so happy that for the time being, that anytime they say this is what she's done and Spear Hero tries to be cliche being like she absolutely didn't, they can just say ask her yourself because he still has the slave crest enabled. And that absolutely just cracks me up and feels like such a reward, at least for the time being, and I really appreciate it. This week's episode of The Rising of the Shield Hero is what I would call the next step. Where does the series go from such a brutal and just impressive and satisfying episode such as episode 21? And really what this episode did was not only did it set up the future of the series for the remainder of this season as well as next season, it also just gave characters time to decompress. There's a lot of subtle but actually pretty important details that were happening throughout this episode. The biggest was obviously the heroes talking kind of roundtable style, and I really enjoyed the sequence because of course they're still going to treat it as a game, they're still going to compare it to the things that they played in their own world, and of course are going to have that gamer mindset of what is the most important thing when you play an RPG to this nature. Do you focus on stats or rarity or all this other aspects that gamers always debate about? But this is still, like, they're not getting a rude awakening like Naofumi got. They still are getting some sort of a rude awakening right now because they literally were told that you're going to die next wave unless you work with Naofumi. But for them, unlike with Naofumi, when he had to start taking this as reality, he had everything pretty much stripped away from him. He had to treat this as, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. These heroes, they don't have to do that, but it is going to be a slow progression, but I imagine they're going to have some pretty rude awakenings elsewhere, maybe outside the kingdom with what they'll fight, things of that nature. So of course they're not going to immediately shift like Naofumi did, because Naofumi had a false rape allegation. That's going to switch his mindset a lot quicker than a queen saying, hey, you guys are idiots and you are gonna die, but I'm not going to punish you and turn you into basically a pig like my husband did to Naofumi. So you understand why they're still like this. Of course, people will still bitch, but it's completely believable writing for why they're acting this way. But it was a very nice sequence, I have to say. I was very entertained by them all talking. Because for Naofumi, even if he doesn't want to admit it, these characters clearly will know certain things that he didn't, because he didn't get everything handed to him on a silver platter at the beginning of the series. He had to make do with his own knowledge and his own connections, which were very few and far between. So I like just seeing all the characters kind of reveal information, like the idea that basically they can pick up any weapon that is similar to their own, so for Naofumi a shield, and they can copy that, which would have been so handy in the early stages. In that sequence where you just see the blacksmith owner being like, hey, you gotta pay for this, and him so disappointed because Naofumi and his party were just rushing around that entire building, taking every shield they could see, and him just being like, I'll pay you back later, put it on my tab. I love the simple comedy in this show. It just felt so nice to have an episode where I could laugh and not feel like, holy shit, Naofumi really is going to eat a poison pie this episode. Just all the little ideas, like the fact that once they reach a location, they can teleport back to it, and just the whole idea of copying, not actually having to make it by hand. This is why these characters still take it as a game. This is all game mechanics. There's no reason for them not to view it as a game, but I'm liking how they're slowly starting to recognize things aren't maybe as they once thought, and I really enjoyed their interactions between Naofumi because Naofumi's taking the higher ground. He recognizes that he needs the information that they have, and in return, he'll probably teach them about the Curse series that he currently is using, but at the same time, he probably wouldn't want to teach him that because you don't want to trust those heroes with an ability such as that. I just really enjoyed just seeing the Queen kind of lay down the law, being like, listen, you guys gotta work together. You guys are completely under level, mostly due to my family being just horrible people, and you learn about the idea of, once again, another game-like mechanic where there's a certain event that's going to occur where XP is basically doubled, and it's really going to help them get the edge before the next wave comes and pretty much bites them in the ass. And I really enjoyed just that entire conversation play out, because as you're watching that, you have Raftalia fighting one of the other heroes' party members because they're just horrible scumbags saying like, oh, filthy demi-humans, we don't need the stupid shield hero, and I just wanted to cut that guy's head off. And of all the characters that we've seen, even for the other heroes, they've never annoyed me as much as this mustache bastard, and I really enjoyed just seeing that just comedic and so basic scene play out. It is so silly, it is so ridiculous when you really break down what was happening. You got a bunch of characters in a throne room just arguing about basic stats in a video game, and then you have Raftalia basically trying to kill one of the other party members' allies. And it's just, you feel like, you know what, we've earned this. We've earned a scene where we can say, we can have silly shenanigans, have it just be absurd and ridiculous, have name calling and even, you know, attempting to murder someone, and not feel like Naofumi's going to lose his head because of it. And it was nice and comfy to have something like this play out. And I like how they're not all buddy-buddies, but I am glad to see that there is at least a step in the right direction. Sharing information, sharing the idea that maybe they will have to work on the battlefield, because for Naofumi, he'll probably survive the next wave. He survived the last wave basically by himself. However, for those other heroes, they're going to die. They almost died last wave. But there will come a point where Naofumi can't survive a wave solo, so this is why they have to work together. They have to level up, they have to train, and they have to, even if they hate each other outside of the waves, they gotta fight alongside each other, else they're completely and utterly screwed. And I just like just seeing all that conversation and dialogue because we haven't really had much chance to have that. Just have them talk and not walk out in anger or frustration or thinking they were higher than the other, especially when you have the top political figure saying, sit your ass down and talk with each other, and I really appreciate that. I know some people, for the source material readers, they don't like how Naofumi is a lot more calm than he was in the source, but just keeping him mad for the sake of being mad would be very boring, and I wouldn't like this show as much as I currently do. The idea of someone being naturally resentful towards a world that put a claim to this nature against them makes sense. However, once you have people around you that actually make you happy and content, you naturally won't be as bitter as you once were. And the fact that he has people like Raftalia or Philo or even Melty, like, there's clearly a reason why his heart isn't so bitter anymore, and I'm really glad with the direction they're taking him in the anime. Something I really appreciate is how we've seen this before, but Raftalia is very worried about when Naofumi eventually leaves. And this is something for obvious reasons. This is the person who literally saved her from being a slave, taught her that all the stories she heard about the shield hero are real, and made her into somebody and sticks up for her anytime someone tries to look down on her race. This is a really important person to her, as he is to Philo. And it's a very worrying fact because he'll keep saying, like, I wanted you to be able to pick your own class upgrades because when I'm gone, I want to make sure you have a proper path in life. I want you to be able to stand tall by yourself and be happy with the life you have. And they are so terrified because there will eventually come a day where Naofumi will leave. And I like how Naofumi says at the end of the episode how he can't leave the world in the Three Stooges' hands. Because, and it's pretty much true, like, I don't think he would leave until he knows the world is satisfied and safe and they're not going to completely blow it up. But in his internal monologue, he says he can't leave until they've found happiness. And I truly believe that. Like, even if he dealt with all the waves and everything was fine, I believe he would stay for 30 years, and then if he eventually found happiness for both of them, I believe that could happen. But I like how they are so terrified because this is an incredibly important person to him, and they're also incredibly important to Naofumi, and I really like that because it allows for that personal touch that you desperately need. Not just feeling like it is just a party following the legendary shield hero, but rather this is a very close person to them, and they're absolutely terrified of what could happen. And Naofumi, he doesn't want to stay in this world, but at the same time, he does care for a very select few, and wants to make sure that they're happy before he does leave. Even if he got a portal that opened up saying, hey Naofumi, you don't have to fight anymore, you can just walk through, I don't think he would take it, because Raftalia would be completely heartbroken and she hasn't found a path that truly makes her happy. It's pretty interesting how the objects that they now have kind of limit them from upgrading to a certain point in their class and actually have to follow a predetermined path based on, the cowlick and just what Raftalia has as well that was given to her with that one sword. It's pretty interesting that certain objects can actually play a factor in terms of how you level up, and just seeing all the just simple moments in just the comedy or just the very slice of life, just ridiculous scenes play out. It's very entertaining. Like, things will continue to get bad. It's not just going to be fun scenes where they brawl after dinner or they're going to just bicker at a table in a royal castle. There's going to be very bad things happening, and I think during this training something probably bad will happen as well. But I do like how after such an emotional driven episode last week, you come into this week saying, holy shit, we can just let out a sigh of relief and think all the stupid shit that we're seeing typically would end up really hurting Naofumi. You'd have a king or you'd have the eldest princess do something with that stupid information and completely ruin his life. And for the first time, you can sit in this castle saying, holy shit, all this stupid nonsense can be acknowledged as stupid nonsense and feel like Naofumi can have a pretty pleasant sleep in a few hours. This is so satisfying, and because we built up to it, it feels so goddamn genuine. The voice actors, once again, I just absolutely adore, especially Raftalia's from emotional heartbreak, especially with the grave scene and just her really being afraid of Naofumi leaving, to even just the ridiculous brawl that she has, being like, yeah, I'll calm down, but I'm gonna take out the trash first. It's just that simple voice acting that really ties it together. To even Naofumi, I just love how he's dealing with these heroes, because he's definitely exhausted, but he's not completely exhausted like we've seen in prior episodes. Like, he's very just like, why do I have to deal with these people? They're just so exhausting, but he still has enough energy because he's been, given a little bit of juice from the queen, being like, well, at the very least, I'm not dealing with the worst political leader anymore. At least she did correct the church. It's no longer the 3-hero church. I can at least keep putting effort in, even if I am just wishing I could sleep in and not deal with these bastards anymore. The voice actors just really give it their all, and the fact that we have Kevin Penkin, just the soundtrack. If you haven't listened to the full soundtrack, I highly recommend it. It is so well put together. I just love how, if you have to go dark, if you have to go slice of life, or if you have to go kind of silly and ridiculous, the OST really brings out that emotion to life. And this episode, it really was just characters talking. It really was just characters just being ridiculous and stupid. And I just felt like the animation, it kind of brought it together in a nice package. There was obviously some sloppy shots, and there actually wasn't that much movement overall. But you felt like for the shenanigans that we were witnessing, the visual presentation really brought together that ridiculous aura really well, at least for myself. Now, I know not everyone's going to feel the same way about the Rising of the Shield Hero as me, especially because there has been deviations from the source material, and maybe you just don't enjoy how the writing is kind of being explored. But for me, this is literally the isekai that I've been waiting for. It just brings together that isekai world that I do think is interesting, but put into a main character who actually had to tackle it in a realistic way, surrounded by what we're typically used to following from the main character's point of view, but now are side characters who we just roll our eyes at. I really enjoy what the series has been doing. I'm glad there is a couple more episodes left, 2 or 3, and it should be interesting to see where the season of the Rising of the Shield Hero wants to wrap up, and if we'll get that confirmation for another season down the line. But for everyone who did watch this week's episode, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate your favorite moment? What did you think of the name calling? Did you appreciate it as much as myself? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.